Technology wonderful. We get it. A little white hand just out in your head. I'm not sure how we got that.
It's not my halo,
Not my mouse. I've taken my mouse over here.
Oh, no, thanks. It's got these are at the moment. Okay, the text of us today start.
We're good to go.
Jen?
Morena, no more hiring way. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of council this morning. Do we have any apologies? I think we have an apology from John Pemberton for lateness. He will be here shortly, hopefully. Welcome to Morris and Alex still that are online. So I'll let somebody move the apology for lateness, moved by Jeremy, seconded by Paul. That would say aye. Aye. Move to item 3, declarations of interest. I'm aware of any this morning. Item 4, public forums, petitions, applications. I'm aware of any this morning. We'll move to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes in the ordinary meeting of March the 8th. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, would somebody like to move?
I'll see.
Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Lyndall. After the discussion, I will put the motion to confirm the minute to the ordinary meeting. All in favour say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 6, which is the adoption of committee resolutions. The first one up is the Otago South Regional Transport Committee meeting of the 3rd of March. Jeremy, would you like to comment on?
Yeah. Chair, obviously this is their first meeting with the committee. It was the first meeting for Councillor Morrison and renewal and myself for 3 years. From this committee, but it was an induction, basically an induction and for the new council, and we just covered, the terms of reference is we've got a midterm review of the 10-year plan of the regional land transport plan. And obviously, the party gave us an update in regards to how things are going, and one point was the good weather has allowed the South Island program to the transport to be on track. So basically a learning meeting. I'm happy to move that.
Moved by Jeremy.
Yeah,
I'm happy to ask.
I've got a question, but I'm happy to second as well. That's fine, if you want to say something else. Just I've highlighted the future focused statement in item 1 in the minutes. Just wondering if you can illuminate us about the climate considerations and the future of transport in your eyes.
Yeah, so perhaps I could comment on Chair on that. Now, it's just a really broad sense that across a range of initiatives pertaining to intra and inter-regional transport, the need to take into account climate change and the associated adaptation and mitigation responses within that. So far more active transport opportunities moving forward. Decarbonisation efforts, understanding the carrying risks and the transport networks as a result of climate change impacts, things of that ilk. So very much aware and was the fact that winds across the Otago found there were a range of explorations. Some of the low-lying areas in South Eden, for example, and our Lakes District account for that climate change.
Peter.
But was there any discussion around, land transport and what you could say the concerns around climate change of the roading network and the vulnerability there? Any discussion about the potential of coastal shipping stepping up to the mark like the point that it used to be? Did that come across the table?
It was certainly raised within the meetings and subsequent meeting construct and stuff on it's understood that that is a consideration, but not a great deal.
Just on that same topic, I understand you probably did talk about some of the resilience issues, like, and the critical bridges that could be out of action and difficulty in getting food supplies to affected regions, for example, North Island and region Islands. Is that part of the discussion?
But if I can add, there's actually, we've had 2 meetings in regards to the local one with the Otago South and another one with South Island. Transport committees, which obviously we did discuss around some of those crucial bridges, etc. And that was obviously the Mahara board focus on those anything the other council, the other provinces now. Matea was very interested in those. You know, it's not just a local issue, it's South Island wide for the economy and the well-being of the community. So it currently get raised that I people want to know what everybody within the whole South Island link,
Good. Well, I was just talking about resilience. And my time on that committee, the greatest concern was the Carnegie Beach and sea erosion. Is that something that's been resolved or what's that mean? Well, it might be something you have to raise,
yes.
and that's why I was bringing it up.
It certainly featured in the exit rail.
Yes.
Risk analysis.
Well, they're on the inside of the road.
Yeah.
The rail has got a very extensive map which could be circulated, I think, somewhere in regard to where their risks are looking ahead with climate change and all these things. So it gives the confidence that the plans and the programs to look at those things. So
Okay. Raising that.
yeah, not the fix it, but the move things.
Robert,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, general question, really. I haven't attended a transport meeting and I've heard a bit about them. They seem very engineering focused. I guess that's natural. But I just wonder, in the discussions around security for communities in terms of the movement of food, I think the time, surely the primary I would mention. Do they consider other matters or other spheres such as the relocalization of food production? Are those people aware of that kind of thing as well as their own provision of tracks and so on?
My initial sense is that within the mandate of what those committees are asked to consider, they do take account for those adjacent set of concerns as far as, to the best of our ability, taking an integrated perspective of how regional transport networks support communities, support the economy, connect with scale beaches. So considering those, but as I say, this is very much an introduction meeting, round meeting. So my sense is we will explore these issues in greater detail.
And I think if we can add, we've got a meeting in the next week or 10 days. So we'll, I mean, we'll bring those. I'll take note of that and they'll bring it up.
no further questions. The recommendation to move and second it, or recommendation, all in favour, say aye. Right, we'll move to the strategy and policy committee meeting on the 29th of March. Linda, would you like to comment on this?
Thank you, Chair. Just to highlight the adoption of the net zero greenhouse gas target 2050, with particular emphasis on some interim targets on the way through, and staff are working hard at getting some baseline data for us so that we internal data so that we can set those interim steps. And the other thing that took up quite a long part of our conversation was converting farmland to forestry. That was actually a really, it says in the notes, lengthy discussion. And we have some work to come out of that after some discussions with the SDC, which I'll catch up with Lucy on shortly, and look forward to some next steps for that as conversation as well. So with that, we have to move the adoption of the resolutions.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Jeremy. Any questions, Lyndall? If not, I will put the recommendation. The adoption of the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right, we'll move to the risk and assurance meeting of the 29th March.
Thank you, Chairman. That's me again.
You will get
But not for long. Just to highlight the Auditor General's article that was circulated to all councillors. Just giving an overview of how the audit risk or risk and assurance committee is to upskill all councillors. So I think this is helpful. Thank you. And the quarterly risk report highlighting the four key focus for councillors, which is health and safety risks, community and stakeholder trust and confidence, maintaining the direction of travel, and key information data systems to support effective decision making. So looking forward to those priorities being progressed. And that's it. Thank you. Happy to move to this.
moved by Lyndall, seconded for that. Seconded by Phil. Any questions or discussion? Not, I will put the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right, we'll move to the South and Civil Defence meeting with Neville, would you like to comment on it?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I'll things first. I did actually provide a chairman's report. So I didn't, but it was the report was that we've actually briefed three ministers in the last 2 months. Minister Russell, Minister McAnulty, and Minister Allen about the activities or the structure of emergency management, the South Linking and the AFA that program, and just emphasising the cooperation that we have between the councils across this region. Been in place now for 12, 13 years, and from our perspective, is operating smoothly. The second thing that came out of this last meeting was the new mayors are very keen to be fully briefed and trained on how to declare emergencies and under what circumstances that should happen. In view of what's been happening in other parts of the country, so that program will be progressing. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about other parts of that meeting.
Robert.
In terms of what's happened in the North Island and the scale of the issue up here, which is something quite different from anything we've seen before, are we getting a lot of feedback back to you or your teams, the team, with regard and a new and expanded approach to climate events like that?
Well, I don't know whether it goes as far as that, but what's happened was during that emergency, staff from here was appointed to work in the affected areas and to observe as well, and they've had 30 briefings about what they've seen and what they've learned from that, so we can apply those learnings to how emergency management response and recovery work out in the stuff. So I think we've learned quite a lot.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Jim. Just a comment, actually, if I can, to commend item 3, the Malapinua emergency facilitator initiative. It's following on from Councillor Gordon's priority and explain the local marae and the small local communities really sustain themselves and rely on Waitangi marae and the villages for want of a better word So really looking forward to seeing how that is integrated into the work that you're doing.
Just to point out, Chairman, that matter of the committee, what agrees with decisions haven't been made yet, the matter was under discussion. And that was very much the Marai role was much wider than just
Oh, excellent.
managing and dealing with it and supporting its own people.
Yeah.
And have a wider community application.
Peter,
Is the emergency hubs for the emergency management, are they still in play? Is it something that the group still work on? And I know that those hubs that be functional. I'm asking sort of a question on the back of the site plan up in the North Island for communities instantly cut off for long periods of time. So, is that something I know the work around the AFA, those hubs were located or with people within the community that can get those things up and going. That's still in play.
Yes, it is, and you mentioned the effects of the communities cut off up on the East Coast. That's another one of the learnings that come out of the observations. We need to review where those hubs are, so that we can be prepared for a massive emergency if you like, when people are cut off. But those hubs will still exist in a part of the federation for a reason.
not only at a regional level, one of the things that's coming out of the North Island is over lots of communication. And a lot of emergency management, even that old RTs that were sort of being thrown away. It's probably going to be satellite phones we're going to need in the future, because some of those communities, although doing the best to look after their communities, there's no communication, and that's been one of the more unusual things I've learned in this last disaster. Not only the devastation, but lots of communication.
Well, just to take a bit further, Chairman, the emergency management Southland have provided radios for use in emergencies to most of the hubs around the province. They also have a cell phone headphone thing that they call headphone, where they can enable some of those communications. But the ministry are also developing a program so that mobile phone systems won't fall over like they did during the East Coast emergency. They can support through satellite communication. So those things are progressing. I'll move the resolution to that meeting, Chairman.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. I'll put the resolution. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Right, we'll move to item 7, which is an application of extraordinary or urgent business, supplementary report or other. Not aware of any this morning. Questions? I've not been made aware of any questions this morning. So I'll move to item 9, which is Chairman and Councillors' reports. A number of us, I've got a small report there on the Zone 5 and 6 meeting in Queenstown. I thought it was a good meeting. We've got the election coming up. All the ministers, some they want to work closely with local government, and we've also a lot more flexibility around pre-orders. What want to do something different? We're listening. That was encouraging, but the cynic in me just wondered whether it would stay till after the election. But it was a good gathering. Obviously, pre-orders have quite a focus, but just sort of reconnecting with some of the unions and chairs, and some of those conversations you have offline, I think are very important. I attended the Federated Farmers AGM a couple of days ago. It was really encouraging. Their comments to Wilma and myself that the perception of our organisation being more front facing and easy to deal with, it's coming through from people who possibly in the past have not found that. So that was encouraging to hear. They asked me to go on a panel later in the afternoon. Good opportunity to actually get some feedback. some of the questions were really reasonably early, but we seemed to handle them reasonably well and it seemed to be well received. But and this was with the list of what the activities I've been to the last month. Somebody may want to ask a question, but I'm sure there'll be a few. Peter.
Just ask a question here, just reading that you sat down and had a round table update with some of your colleagues in the regional space and made a comment while several regional council rates increases are significantly above the inflation rate. Is that a right across the South Island, is it, or what sort of numbers are some of the other councils considering?
Well, I can't remember offhand, but ORC are double figures, we've got the review in a row. I think ECAN may have been the same. Most of them had already had the meeting we're having today. So when we got to that stage, I said, well, I told them I'd have to kill them. So we wouldn't be dealing with theirs.
So in the context, few of their colleagues, neighbours, double figures, we would say. So,
The overall tenor of the territorials, they were trying to hold below rate of inflation, but with the odd outlier, Queenstown would have been one of them. Massive growth and that, all that sort of thing. I'm trying to remember what some of the smaller unitaries were. The top of South Island, I think they were probably above the inflation rate too. But everybody's struggling with the situation we would have had, our own costs probably been running, and the same with other regional councils, probably been around 10% for the last couple of years. So it is a real struggle to actually hold their positions. The territorials, I guess, with concerns about Three Waters, seem to be holding pretty close to the LTPs.
okay. Thanks, Ray. Could I please I've got a couple of just quick reports.
Yes, there we go.
Just firstly, the Dipton greenhouse gas project runs through Brighton South and is on its way. It's creating quite a lot of good publicity, I must say, for Dipton and the South. And so there's widely, there's interviews on Radio New Zealand and stuff like that on talkback programs and stuff like that. So that's progressing really well. And also last night, myself and Council of Edmonton attended the Otago Federated Farmers AGM. And I just would like to report on that really pleasing to see they have a lot of young farming leaders, and especially young female farming leaders, progressing up through their executive. So they're building a really good, strong leadership base. The same issues they have is interacting with the ORC quite heavily around plans and RPSs and plan changes. So a lot of the issues are very similar to what we've been seeing. So it was a really good meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I owe you an apology because I didn't muster the treats and get the rest of zone 5 and 6 report done. So apologies for that. But I'm wading through my somewhat fulsome report to cut it down, and then I'll circulate it to Councillor Morrison to add the 2 cents worth, and then we'll share it with everybody. So apologies for that.
Any further reports? Jeremy.
I was just going to give a report back on the tree removal. Overall, it was a very successful operation. I thank Paul and his river management team. It was certainly interesting. There was obviously some grave concerns that we were going to clear every tree that was standing. But that was, I think, once we had workshops and even a couple of meetings down on the river bank, and Councillor Gibson was there one day while they were cutting the trees down. There was obviously a bit of concern from a couple of councillors indicating that everything was going to be exposed, but when they actually saw what trees were being removed, the council actually asked to remove them all. So it was a win-win. It was a good operation, cleaned up, and it certainly hopefully will affect the town in the future. So I said, yeah, well, being very positive feedback.
Robert and Eric.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering, with regard to this report about the tree removal and the one that occurred over here. So is the council keeping a tally, weighing up how many trees we take out in the environment and how many we put back in and how we're looking?
I'm pretty sure our staff reported to us last time that they're putting 2 new trees in for each one. It's coming up with the 3. 3 1, 3 1 3. I know 3 for 1. So that.
And certainly in discussions offered some more trees need to be planted around the east land and things. They have to do that too, which we are looking in the future.
Just on the side on that, I wonder if we've got somewhere we can plant a tree for the coronation on our own. If we would be invited to actually take part with ICC, but that wouldn't be.
It'd be oak, wouldn't it?
That gallery on the road would be perfect. Fortunately, we don't have sealants. Here,
Just for a matter of interest, I report last night, I attended live streams where they had an international spokesman on AI, artificial intelligence. And it was a real person. That was a real person that I came away quite alarmed. And all I'm just reporting is that coming towards us, it will be some decisions on how we use it for the good and protect it against the bad. And it's an area that's moving incredibly quickly, and I come away quite disconcerted about the challenges that are actually ahead of us. Without going any further, report that.
Can I just add to that, the report we had from, I can't think of his name, Chris Jenkins the other day, with regard the AI application to looking at the surface of water of rivers to assess their flow and so on, was on the encouraging side. It's good application of AI, but you were concerned it's really invalid.
Well, and the point is this, Chair, the ability for AI to process data is so much quicker than anybody else. And the question will be, at what stage do you give authority to AI to do your work and not across the whole spectrum of things? And that is something that is going to confront us before very long.
Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to report yesterday, I met up with council staff, actually chair, as well as 4 executives. At the Marrow Bridge, bridge to look at ground extraction. Quite interesting to note, rather down under the Narrow Bridge, that I would suggest that there's possibly a 50% reduced flow would build up underneath that bridge. And these times of issues with the events, it's probably a good time for them to clear that. It was actually quite amazing to see how much reduced flow is. So it was a good meeting. Hopefully there'll be some action.
Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I just want to pick up on Jeremy's talking about tree removal and the wider issue of flood protection. We were over the delegation before and talk about flood protection, and what I come away with that is there is a degree of comfortability, not only in board but around this province around flood protection. And I wouldn't go so far to maybe we take it for granted, but you've got to realise that we have some really good assets in place. But it's not about what has happened, it's about what we're going to do in the future. So things have worked really well for now, but in further discussion, and I'm sure this will go through our long-term planning process of what is that level of protection going to look like in the next 40 years. Because some people have made some good decisions 40 years ago that gives us that comfortability now. So just looking into the future.
A good point, Peter. And people's perception is living memory, and that's probably only about 50 years. We know we're going to experience some events that the North Island's have to put up with at some stage in the future, and hopefully we get a plan in place and implement it before that happens. Just a couple of things I didn't mention. We were all down at the pump station at the Invercargill Airport. That's, you know, a great resilience project. And those pumps are finally installed, will have the ability to pump at least 40% more than the current capacity. And there was also a bit of a conversation about what would happen with one of the existing pumps, whether it would be portable on an emergency, whether you could actually use one of those to further improve the resilience. And the other thing I was going to mention, you know, talk about technology moving quickly. Steve Canning was one of the speakers of the Federated Farmers the other night in the energy space, and a lot of people have been skeptical about hydrogen, talking about a 40% efficiency rate. With the larger electrolyzers, the price was always sold kilograms and about $4, down about $2.50. Apparently the Australians have come up with a process that will increase that efficiency to 98%. So things are moving at pace, and no doubt updates around the world at the moment. The world's quite a focus on alternative fuels, which is good. John, do you want to report on your meeting this morning?
Yeah, look, I just and that from speaking at the Dairy Women's Conference, which is on the Escott National Conference. Really good turnout. I couldn't see how many people were there, but it was a full room. And their popular exposures are brighter, braver, and bolder. And so I was part of the panel discussing, you know, how that positive action on the ground. And so I was there literally presenting the work that I've done with Land and Water on our farm around radio drills. Yeah, it was some really good conversations, and yeah, it was really good thing for people that move forward. But it's looking efficiently coming up in that direction. So what we keep hearing, so it's something. That's all the councils. That's certainly being a national conference. There wasn't much discussion around Southland or Lobbles and more fine things like that. So it seems to be very similar. Everyone seems to be a very similar space around the country. All sectors in general terms.
So they are up for in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And I think we need to recognise the role that women are playing, and the rural sector they are becoming they're having more direction than in the past, I suppose you could say, around how businesses are operating. And you know, it's great to be engaging with a lot of people like that.
So John, this is really further reports. We'll move on to item 1, which is the chief executive report. Well, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. This is a council meeting following a month quite structured by public holidays, which on one hand is extremely welcome, but on another does have managed to reduce the number of weeks in the period between council meetings to report on. But it also brought with it a number of meetings across various sectors that we participate in, and as the councillors have been reporting, we attended the Zone 5 and 6 meeting, which is the meeting of all of the local government councils in South Island, and also the chair and myself have been to the regional sector meetings talking about the collaborative work across the regional council sector. And not surprisingly, the topics around that have dominated the conversations have been around, at the regional sector, certainly the impacts of climate change and its long-term effects for us. So while really conversation is before us in relation to the damage in Tairāwhiti and in Hawke's Bay, the need to bring forward to assist government the expertise that sits inside the regional council sectors where catchment management is our core business, and the longevity of information and the knowledge about the need to how to respond well, and the amount of work there is something that we really need to be working together on behalf of New Zealand as a whole, and to support government in its thinking in that space. Government is very focused at the moment on responding to the immediate needs in those two areas. We heard some very sobering conversation from the mayor of Brisbane District Council and from the chair of Hawke's Bay Regional Council, who are both leading the joint recovery efforts, about the extent of that, the work that needs to happen just to recover. And from the Secretary for the Environment, who's the former Chief Executive of Hawke's Bay Regional Council, who, before he took up his new role, actually went back to his job, literally back to the Hawke's Bay Regional System of Recovery to be prepared and to be prepared at a level that perhaps in the past we considered to be unlikely events. And so the matters relating to climate change have dominated a lot of our conversations thinking in these meetings. And so that and the future of three waters for the sector as a whole, and what is now called the services reform, the fact that that's now gone to the creation of 10 entities with a reduction in the potential benefits across all of the councils in terms of the economy of scale, in order to actually sort of return more democracy and regional and local input into decision making. The trade-off is that actually some of the benefits of coming together into the number of entities was discussed, and those were discussed at the same time as the meeting with ministers. And the ministers did, as the chairman said, give a lot of time to that conference, so that was well traversed. We also met at the conference with the incoming chief executive for what was previously known as Entity D, the Lower South Island water body, who's a seasoned chief executive in the space from Tasmania. And he spoke in the evening of the first day of the conference at length about how to ensure regional voice in the delivery. The future of Entity D is something that's coming up for conversation by the councils. I believe that it's now going to be known in Otago Southland as Entity J. So those are the matters that have really been dominating the conversation. I mean, from our perspective, on a very practical level, those who are driving down Fair Street in Chicago will be seeing the Fair Street pump station rising out of the ground. Council have been to visit that. We did a visit during the last council meeting by Minister Kitty Tapu Allen, who is responsible for regional development and is the co-investor on behalf of the Crown on that project with us. So there's been, we're about to be putting the pumps in place. That project's going very well. It's a significant project for this region, and it's designed to not only keep the residents in that area and the city of Chicago dry, but also the regional transport of the airport out of water. So that's a project that's progressing extremely well and at this stage to budget and progress. Moving through on the climate change front, there's certainly been both the staff interagency governance meetings been underway in relation to climate change, and also the subcommittee and the matters relating to our own organisational net zero greenhouse gas emission target having been set by a strategy and policy committee. We're working on the way in the organisation to take us forward with that. This is another matters, I'd just like to reflect on them. The matters that are before us in court at the moment in relation to our water and land plan are detailed in this report. There is some update on where we are at in our management strategy in relation to gravel, which is a matter that has been widely discussed, and I think the council will come through about yesterday's meeting in relation to that. What's quite clear is that none of the matters that are before us at the moment are matters that we are facing on our own. We need to be working with the other agencies that are involved in this. And in relation particularly to climate resilience and to the management of our rivers and gravel, that really does require Waka Kotahi to be involved in that, and the districts, because the bridges are either territorial bridges or owned by state highways and owned by the Crown. So these are all matters that we are working closely with the state sector on, and we've got a great deal of support from the government funding agencies through the Provincial Growth Fund and Kāmua to assist in helping us with those conversations. Just on another matter, we have reported previously on the fact that we were doing a lot of work in the coastal marine area around Tiwai and the estuary to look at sampling in relation to the potential impact of contamination from the smelter in that region. The report has been developed by our consultancy, and I understand that it's now actually just being reviewed, and so we are hoping to have the outcome of that ready for release quite shortly. Through this as well, and helping to set kind of a baseline from which we understand the impact in the coastal marine area, being the area that we didn't really have a great deal of background information on from the previous sampling on site, and also provide us with slightly better information. If I understand that we're going to get that is information around the impact of the existing landfills, which was also missing from the previous report that we had. So I'm looking forward to receiving that, and I believe that's coming. So, council ready to take any questions that we have on these members and any others that are in the report. No.
Any questions on that very comprehensive report?
Just in regards to, obviously winter growth and consents, on my ears picked up at the, I was at the Federated Farmers AGM, and whether it disagree or there's a lot of debate about the effectiveness of them, but they are obviously a legal requirement and forwards coming up. With a comment in regards that they've been informed, people were getting informed that staff and the ES might be looking at, and I think it's probably pretty naive to work on that theory, that they are a legal requirement, again, whether you agree with them or not. But it's, and I know ES has gone a long way to make it as easy as can. So it was just a comment that I thought we might need to clarify that we will be looking at some of those, especially if there's adverse effects, and it's not going to probably have a situation if we haven't got a consent as well. So we just want to point that out. Might need to clarify that.
I'll start and then basically appreciate it. And so, so at the high level response, we've been really clear. All of most of last year, we have an annual intensive integrating program that non-stop to some degree, and it starts with advice and support. We do our aerial flights, we do our roadside assessments, and obviously when we get into winter, the approach changing for people and we respond to concerns or just inspection. So that's been a program that's been in place for a good number of years. No intention of changing that. We've also been really clear, I hope, around the options that we've developed for the landowners. So there was, and it still is the case that if you're not sure, contact us. There's options to operate within the activity state. There's options to work with risk is clear. I think consent is a really good option, and some of the comments around we've tried our very best to make it as efficient and as cost effective as possible, make that process as simple as possible, and consent that gives you, say, 5 years, gives you 5 years certainty. What we've been clear about. And then obviously, as you know, we've developed the implemented activity option as well, which is we treat it just like eyes to them, but we plan on them, whether they comply with every aspect of the slope, and then sort of the 10% performance that improves to 10 to 15 degrees. So we're really clear that there's a range of options. Come to Environment South London, we'll provide the advice support that's needed. But if we do get if we have incidents, we will follow our normal regulatory pathway, which will be we will investigate, and we will always provide advice and support. But obviously, we also have to investigate incidents. We'll take the action as required.
And just further to add to that, I think Paul's largely covered it, but applicants have provided us increasing seeing those applications within the required timeframes and then moving through the system. I was asked to do a Radio New Zealand interview yesterday morning on this specific topic. I doubt what I would give up my day job, I haven't heard it yet, but it was reasonably thorough in terms of what our response to would be to a situation of ongoing non-compliance. and, you know, we made it pretty clear in that discussion and in other queries that we've had, that we certainly want to work with people, help people through processes, help them achieve compliance, but if it's undertaken poorly, intensive winter grazing is a high risk activity, and if somebody continues to undertake that non-consented high risk activity for a period of time, then it's going to be some consequences to that. We haven't put any specifics around it, but it's quite clear that it's not just an education only approach. Education is certainly our focus in helping people, but there also needs to be some level of consequences if people are doing something that's having a significant adverse environmental effect.
No, thanks, Glenn. And just on that, I did mention, reply to a question at the Feds conference. I feel we've got a bit of advertising going on, which is really good. But you know, last winter was pretty kind, and we need to keep reiterating. If we get a weather event and we've got people out there as a matter of principle have not applied because they thought they would be able to use the certified farm plan that didn't arrive in time, whether they like the law or not, it's still the law, and with recreation, we will be bound to act. And we've had a great record the last couple of years. We don't want people living this down going forward because people are watching, and it only takes one or two and it powers the whole industry. So we'll make great progress, and just thanks for our staff for the education first and the support we're giving people. Eric.
Yeah, I just want to affirm what you said, but how have we really intimate that with the clarity that you have just said that now to our troops in the catchments?
Probably have a couple of paragraphs in my article from Saturday, but I'm not sure how many read them.
Yeah,
But I think we have to keep that ongoing.
it just concerns me that ignorance is no defence, but it may well cause us some problems.
Brilliant, Mr. Chairman. I think it's certainly something we need to keep an ongoing focus on and keep it ongoing communications going. For the reason that Council was highlighted, it's going to be an issue that we're focusing on throughout winter, and there's certainly, as Chairman's highlighted, a lot of external eyes on this issue and how we're dealing with it. So ongoing communication is really important.
We've got Peter then Robert.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I really appreciate the efforts that have gone in. And the council and you guys, but especially acknowledge farmers throughout the region. We've been and we've tried as hard as we can, and we've still trying to keep their farmers on that working for that improvement train. And it's really important. And I've seen a large shift in the front loader with education, but it gets to a point that you have to be stronger on the regulation out the back. And I think we're moving to that. We're seeing a lot of farmers that are getting to a point where they're self-policing around their communities and talking about things that aren't right because they see it as a risk to themselves long term. I found to use the practice of intensive grazing. So it's moving along pretty good.
Robert.
And given that there's obviously the potential for misunderstanding or lack of full understanding in the community, would it be inappropriate for us to provide a press release or some kind of article above and beyond your own excellent column, just so that it's right there in front of people both in paper and online?
I think we are doing it, but we probably could do more. I heard the Carl on the radio the other day, and he gave a very good clear report, basically saying we've got an issue course, but we probably need to be a little bit clearer. The number of people who have applied so far, I think, are well below the number who actually would have something in place. The deemed permitted activity, that team has put quite a bit of work in. It's a very cheap and easy way of being covered, and we probably need to get a little more publicity. There's still a bit of confusion out of Doug Borthwick's interim decisions on the 15 degrees and the NES. Probably a good effort of clarity on that one too. I think the NES, some of those provisions not long term, but it's probably not well understood by the public. At the end of the day, we don't want nutrients and sediment getting into waterways. Simple as that.
Could I support that notion of council guidance about it? Would be quite appropriate if we just take over the 1st of May to reiterate what we've just been saying.
Yeah, hey, Absolutely. I know that we've had one media release last week. We've got the councillors following smoke, and we've had radio, so on and so forth. We've got a pretty comprehensive comms plan. But it's only the feedback is really important, and we also have direct communication with stakeholders as well. We've got a regulatory newsletter that goes out that we use. So we will continue to shape that and address what the core comms plan being happy with, but if we need to do more in a different way, we'll go back to it. And if you have any feedback for that, guys, we will factor that in the usual.
Linda,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow that and then to entirely different question. There are also existing channels from other organisations that we can get our message out through, right? So I think we'll get my feedback on that one. Not surprisingly, I'm going to talk about air quality. And on page 49, there's just a mention of outdoor burning, which reminded me that we, at the climate change subcommittee, we had a presentation from Mr. Graves about ways to burn down your items without creating so much smoke. So I'm wondering how we can work, because there was an offer of assistance from them. I was wondering if there's a way we can work that into, some of the infringement place, or if you do this, then try this. I don't know, just asking how we might progress that conversation, even if it is through compliance or.
Yeah, through you here. I think we're always looking at options in terms of their education and advice that we can give to people. When our staff are out at outdoor burnings, as many of you will be aware, there was a lot last weekend.
Doesn't stop at the city boundary.
No, it doesn't stop at the city boundary. So while we're in a prohibited season and within the city boundary, we're not without outside, and the weather conditions play a big part in how that sits over the city. So we're always looking for options. We haven't ourselves seen various presentations, so we'd be interested in following that up. Anything that we can, I guess, pass on to people in terms of that is helpful.
Mr. Chairman.
Morris said it enough for a while. Morris, you go.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was pretty much the same as what Lyndall has said. Actually, that was my question as well. But I think that there's a gap in our rules or legislation relating to smoke generated by fires in the peri-urban and the rural community, because those fires that people light of their green macrocarpa hedge piles are really pollute large areas of the countryside, and we don't, it's been going on for years. There doesn't seem to be any change. I think that we could be a bit more assertive in this space somehow. I know it comes down to the air plan, it's got to be reviewed and all that sort of thing, but in the early stages, more education and more persuasion, if you like, of those sorts of activities that, as I say, can pollute large areas of the countryside. We do need to do more about that, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris, and maybe it's an education campaign, because we've got rules inside the issue, but my understanding is some of these are not illegal, but they're still affecting people within the issues. And a bit of an education thing, if you are going to be running on how to do it in a way that's much more user-friendly, is a good place to start.
Thank you.
I was just going to thank you. Just going to add to that too. And I appreciate that there's been work done on this already, but it has a slow effect, doesn't it, the education program? And clearly we haven't caught those early starters this year either. Mr. Dylan Graves' presentation, where he described the importance of lighting your fire from the top. I mean, it's quite a catchy, you could make a catchy phrase out there, couldn't you? You could broadcast that pretty quickly, pretty widely. Maybe dry as a bone, light up at the top, or whatever it is you want to say. It's those two things together, because as you say, there isn't regulation that covers it necessarily. It just needs willing compliance, or maybe a great idea, but can't do that without causing all that smoke that Councillor Waterway is describing. So my concern is just that slow rolling these things out, and yet the behaviour continues. So I would encourage some quick action perhaps on that very point, but you need to do a little bit of research to see if he's right in what he's described. It sounds very plausible, but I guess that's your role. Thank you.
We can, it's about how much resource we've got to do, I think we can go away and have I think, this is the time of year where we actually do our planning in terms of the financial year. So now is the time to start thinking about how we can do things differently, and the, responding to air incidents and dust, they factor quite heavily in our pollution thing. So it would make sense for us to look at it and look what the hotspots are and try and make an efficient and effective response system. So it's feedback that we'll take away.
Different topic, I see we've installed a sea level monitoring site and water temperature thing in Jacobs Estuary. I suspect this is the first one in South. I don't know if you have any others.
Right. The sea level monitoring.
Oh, that's great.
Question is one of the first.
Through you, Chair, and just wanted to sort of unavailable today, and I can't actually answer that question off the top of my head, so I will go to come back to you very shortly. At least anyone in the room that can answer that today. So,
I know there's one in Dunedin as well, and if you want to monitor that, so that you can go online, but I haven't been aware.
I believe there's one in Bluff Harbour.
Yeah.
It has been there for some time.
I think you'd only need one, because there's this oceans of the planet rise, they should all read the same thing, but they don't. There's huge variation. And it's good to do about it.
Any further questions on the report? We've got Neville, seconds of Bill, the discussion, I will put the motion, all in favour will say aye. Right, we'll move to item 2, which is the 2024-24 update on page 53. Would you like to comment on the report?
Moving on, the general manager, and second we can come back to that who's leading on.
either way.
So councillors, I will actually ask the general manager to make some comments on the paper. Just to say that this is the third year of this long-term plan, and the long-term 2021. It requires us to provide expectation of rate increases across a 10-year period. And our strategic planning approach to this was to provide much more even forecast for what those rate increases would be based on what we knew at the time in terms of the assumptions that we had made. We were forecasting out years at 5% per annum. And we faced that last year that the world changed a great deal since 2021 very quickly. The rate of inflation increased due to a lot of pressures relating to the supply chain problems from COVID-19. And the council proposed to hold the line on 5% that year, on the not knowing what was about to come the following year. So in face of 7% inflation. So we managed our way through that, primarily due to our own need to slow down our work program in face of partly the number of staff available to us from COVID-19, and also just the difficulty working during that period. So we were able to get through last year at a 5% rate increase. but we have faced inflationary pressures across the board in the organisation. So this year, in looking at the budget, we've had inflationary pressures year on year. The Stats New Zealand forecasting inflation for the coming financial year is 6.7% for households, so much higher for other parts for business, over 7%, and for the farming sector of 14%. So we're very aware of the pressures on the community, but we're facing cost increases across the board ourselves. So we've looked at where we can actually make savings in that regard, and so we've brought into the plan $500,000 worth of potential savings for this year, slowing down some of our work programs in relation to strategy and planning, and also the ability for us to be able to look at our transformation program and some of that work to become capital expenditure rather than our operating expenditure. Alongside that, we've had the benefit of the return of the marine fee, which is $2.5 million in the forecasting for next year than we had originally forecast. We were expecting that the cruise ships would come back sufficiently. The benefit from that is that this organisation has been operating with this for some years, and this forecast includes the future. But during the last 3 years of the LGP, we've also had significant increases in the cost of our major capital projects. And the financial year after this, we're going to start paying that debt back at a much higher level than we anticipated also. So we are in a position this year where we have we're forecasting actually it's $3.9 million more cost to this organisation's operating expenditure than we forecast in the LTP in 2021. But we are in the position of being able to ask council to fund only $500,000 more of that expenditure to cover our costs and bring us into a balanced operating position, simply through the way we're going to phase our work and because we have the return on the marine fee. We looked very seriously at how we could actually continue to work at the extent that we would be taking ourselves back into deficit, knowing that we're facing the need to repay debt primarily over the Stepford Pump Station in the year after this financial year. So our proposal to council is that we would like a rate increase above forecast 5% due to the increase in the cost of living for the whole of the country, and that appears to be ongoing, and we're not expecting that that rates are going to fall significantly, or that inflation is not going to be above the original forecast in 2021 in this coming financial year or half years. So that equates to $500,000 of expenditure or a $23 residential rate increase on average. And we don't ask for that lightly. We've done a lot of work to keep this as close to a balanced budget as we can, and we've achieved that. But we realise, councillors, that it is more than we had forecast in 2021 by 9%. So that's our commendation to you, and we look forward to your direction. Rachel, I want to just take you through the paper and recommendations.
And Rachel will do that, and I'll get you after that. That is good paper. Then we go to
Yes, so just very much to the chief executive's comments, just wanted to highlight that there are no significant or material changes proposed from the long-term plan for year 3. So essentially the focus on building resilience to the impacts of climate change, addressing freshwater challenges and the transformation work remains. As has been outlined, though, we are facing cost increases. And thirdly, we have, though, on the positive side, a return of marine fee income. So that's setting the scene. We have been through a process, as you know, of workshops on this topic over the last few months. So the item sets out the discussions that have been held during those workshops. And what we are seeking through the recommendations is essentially that you the average rates increase, and as the chief executive said, staff are recommending that that is at 6.9%, higher than the 5% in the long-term plan to cover those cost increases, and we think that's the position with current and future rates are best balanced. We also have a proposed allocation for the marine fee that has returned, and that's set out on the table on page 54. And what we would propose is that once you've made those solutions today, we will go out and run an informal feedback process and bring the final plan to you for adoption in June. If I can perhaps just respond to one of the earlier questions about rates increases by other regional councils. I can confirm that the rates increase for Otago Regional Council was about 18.8%. Environment Canterbury was 10%. West Coast Regional Council haven't put out a annual plan consultation, but their advice informally was that they would be sticking to their long-term plan, but had a 10% rate increase for the third year. Give me take questions from.
Right, Jeremy.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank the staff. It's always an interesting time when we start talking about the dollars and what we've got to go out to the public with. And I know we've asked to make sure the public know we have asked a lot of questions and challenged things and not been answered. The questions been answered well. So thank you very much for that. So I think this year has been good. I think sometimes it's a political debate, what the number sounds like, but there's a reality out there that life is a bit different than it was a few years ago. It's inflationary costs. So I'm very comfortable with the 6.9. And I know the management team are obviously comfortable with that. And it's obviously been really good to see my point of view and councils that our investments with marine fee coming back has made a hell of a difference. And it's probably good to point out that we do to the public that we do have the South Port land leases, our marine fee and other investments that do subsidise or contribute to our rates paid, and they do go up and down a bit for most. But to see that marine fee has come in really, really good. But being very comfortable with the 6.9, but future will be challenging funding the shovel ready projects, and obviously the CD has indicated that, and obviously they'll be consulted through the next term. But so yeah, we're certainly going to be going to the community to ask how they want it and things. So even though we're comfortable, I'm just saying the rate increases are going to be certainly challenging. To tell the public that looking ahead, that this may seem high, but maybe in the future it might be higher too. So but look, I'm very comfortable with that, and how they get this and move on to the next year.
I've got Eric, Morris, and Peter. Eric,
Alistair.
Alistair as well. You want to let Alistair together?
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say I've been quite exercised by this whole process. We put a hand up 2 years ago and said we'll go 25.5, and that 5 is a commitment we made with the best information at the time, but it was still a commitment. And if we step beyond that, I've had to justify why we might actually do that. I want to just acknowledge the staff and the chief executive said that they can accommodate savings of about $500,000, and that's been some serious work that's gone in to actually achieve that. Best information we had when we made that commitment was inflation was running at under 2%. Interest rates were less than half what they are now. But we've had a bit of a wake-up call about resilience, and we've seen what's happened in the North Island as well. And the worst thing that we can do now is do an LTP every 3 years with a 25.5. We need to be a bit more realistic, I think, and say the stuff we just have to do. And whilst we didn't see it at the time, it's come upon us. And so I would have a question that if we, because there's been some accommodation, are we putting our ratepayers at any risk at all by not actually going above the 6.9. You've said we've made some savings to be executive. Just how secure are we if we sit at that? I'm prepared to sit and say, yes, I'll support the 6.9, but I just think we need to have a little a picture of what that might mean in terms of the security of our ratepayers and what we've got to actually do and should be doing.
Would you like to comment on that?
I'm sorry, I was leaving that to the chief.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if that was a question or just.
Well, it's a question here, if you wouldn't mind.
So first of all, I want to give the council assurance that 6.9% the organisation will be able to deliver what's in the annual plan. The council is working now, and council will be working with us, and the community will be able to see the conversation about the upcoming long-term plan, which is in the following year. The first year of our long-term plan is the first year where repayments for our what we originally called shovel ready, but now called climate resilience projects are to be repaid. At the time that we advised council last year that there were significant cost increases in relation to the Fair Street project, we also discussed the fact that what those costs would look like really needed all the shovel ready projects to play out first, but also the nature through which we might repay those needs to be discussed. So we're aware that we need to start repaying debt, and that is going to have an impact on our costs. How that happens though is a matter for discussion. And that's part of the project in which we're going to work through into the future. We know that costs increase every year. We know that we need to meet our everyday costs with our everyday income. That's required by the Local Government Act. And we can only in long-term planning do what we can do in terms of foreshadowing future cost increases based on what we know at the time. So the ongoing problems of inflation for us related off the back of COVID to the Ukraine war, and particularly the cost of commodities that resulted from that, including problem products and a lot of other supply materials that derive from those. So those were unforeseen. We can only do the best of what we do. I want to give you some confidence that the organisation will continue to be able to work, but I think we've got some good maths to work through for the following year. And I think one of the things as Tanya will probably say to me, but she said it to me, is that, you know, whatever we think is going to happen in the future so far in the last 3 years, it's still the same thing, it's not what we thought was going to happen. So I don't want to predict what the 8 years look like, but I want to give you confidence that we've got our process and intent to work through on behalf of the region to deliver value.
Thank you.
If I can, Chair, I'd like to add to that. It's a very good question. I'd like to talk about 3 things. One of them is preparedness for climate resilience and safety of the people. We have added money into the budget. We've added $1.2 million for preparation and investigation to start off our master plan for understanding the information that we need to help us build future climate resilience. We've added funding for any future projects that will come from Kanawa so that we are at shovel ready and able to take advantage of those. So we are looking forward with that. There is sufficient money in the budget to ensure that our water plan continues and our planning work. With the return of the marine fee, we are able to continue our biosecurity work for pests and marine pests and continue with our coastal planning work. So I'd like to suggest it's the best we can do, and it's certainly a balanced, to use the words of some previous Minister of Finance, it's a balanced budget.
Thank you. Morris.
Well, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is similar to Eric's, but I'm looking at the statement at the bottom of page 57, where you say that the 6.9 is a position where current and future rates and debts are best balanced. In the workshops we had, I understood that if we go for a 6.9, then it's likely that future rates are would be over 10%. Is that still the case?
I think one of the things we'll deal with next year is intergenerational borrowing. It's actually different from a rate rise, and it's a conversation we'll go out and have during our LTP with the public. After what we've seen in the North Island, I think doing nothing is not an option that anybody would accept in our communities. But it's different from borrowing people bread and butter, and those are discussions appropriate we will have with our public. We're not actually consulting this year, but one of the stuff like that, but after that, listening.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Is that my question is if we go to 6.9%, will that mean that we have to have higher rates in the future, particularly next year, as opposed to going to the 8.5, in which case we may not have to raise the rates higher than that or much higher than that next year? Do we know that now, or is that too difficult to predict?
I think we can answer that, councillor, and say that clearly if we go higher now, that will take pressure off next year. And we could continue that up until 10 or 11% and reduce the rates in the future. This is the position that the majority of the councillors felt was the right balance between this year and the next year. And knowing what we know and what we don't know about our current operating costs and our capital projects that are still ongoing. The answer to your question is yes, a higher rate now would take a little pressure off next year.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman.
So, and also councillor, just say that while to look at that and modelling that this year against existing budget, just to reiterate, we're about to enter a long-term planning process for the following year. So what the choices that council will make will be exactly around the nature of the work programs going forward, and that's going to be the choice that will also drive what the rate is. So the principle that Tanya is saying is absolutely right. The higher the rate this year, potentially the lower any increase the following year might be. But you also have all of the capacity to make some choices around what the work program for the organisation will be in the long-term plan. So to put a figure on what out year rate increases would be at this stage would be to preempt that long-term planning process. So in principle, yes, but in detail, we don't have that detail tonight. We will not speculate on that.
Okay.
Peter, Lyndall, Alistair, John, and myself. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I support the 9% increase. And I just want to go on. I do support the discussion that's happening here, and I'm not going to go over there and say the same thing. Let's say, but what I would say is in the medium term, and I'll just pick up on what you've just said, Laura, I probably use different terminology, levels of service, and that's going to be the hard discussion through the long-term planning process. I call that a medium-term discussion, but a long-term discussion we need to have at this council is really about how we better organise ourselves, and I'm talking region-wide as 4 councils, organise ourselves better to meet the future needs of ratepayers. And I'm talking directly around ratepayer welfare and called by a retired lady on her own and talked about the increases in environment settlement rates on her, and she's on a fixed income over the last 5 years, and the sustainability of that going forward. And I think it's an underlying worry in this room of where to next. We might have this year organised, but it's a real concern. So, but and I just want to say thanks very much. That did start off as a bit of a negotiation where this was going to sit, but I really appreciate you going back to your teams and reworking stuff and coming back again and again. So thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, picking up on what's already been said, really, my initial concern was twofold. One was that, you know, we know we've got a huge work program here, and on the other hand, my constituents are generally the people on the fixed income, as you say, and so the flexibility for them to juggle pots of money around is just not there because they've only got one pot. And that is barely big enough for many of them as it is. So we, as you say, Peter, we talked through a lot of those scenarios and lots of options, and I was really concerned about the out years. So next year and to follow Morris's point about higher rates in the coming years, but I think I'm comfortable with where we're sitting because staff have assured us that the levels of service under option 2 will be no different for the coming years. So that gives me some comfort. Still an increase for my fixed term fixed income constituents, but hopefully it is manageable, and it's up to us to be clear and transparent and prove that we can be trusted. I guess continue to prove that we can be trusted. But my question actually is, I wonder if Tanya, I know you've kind of alluded to it, so as Chief Executive, but could you just explain the difference between the deficit and the debt, and how funding those two different things has brought us to the conclusion on page 50?
I think it's really, perhaps we'll look at parallels. The deficit is equivalent to running an overdraft on our own home accounts or a credit card. Whereas debt is something we need to take on to buy a house. And I think we all agree that spending on infrastructure like houses and in the case of the council, pump stations, blood banks, is really important. It's more important than it's ever been. And that we can do that legitimately and spread that cost over a generation or more. 80 years that pump station has potential life. We've written it down to 50, but they're saying 80 in the UK. The difference is though we can't keep accumulating on your credit card with the effect of what we call deficit, because it only grows, it grows with interest, and it's very hard once you're headed in that downward direction to come back up again. And we are managing to do that, and we don't want to keep accumulating. It's one of our principles in fact that says we'll spend today what we earn today within our long-term intergenerational assets. It's also a fundamental tenet of the local government, and for that reason is that those who write those things in there want councils to be managed sufficiently so that we continue improving in the future, and that we don't go anywhere near our debt limits. So we spend a lot of time looking at resilience in the long-term plan, assuring people that we have the capacity, should we end up, unfortunately, with anything like this, that we have sufficient funds, both resilience and reserves and debt, to allow us to recover from that.
Alistair.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, thank you, staff, for the effort that you've put in, but I'm extremely concerned for our constituents, ratepayers, whatever you like to call them, for their well-being and their welfare. Now, that's two sides to life at the moment. Probably the welfare is the one of facing the bills and paying them in the short term, and the well-being in the long term. And I think by having our rates as low as we propose to do so, we're going to affect the well-being in the long run. It was only yesterday that we got told to put a culvert in now is worth $180,000. Normally it was $60,000. Where are we going to get the money from? Maybe our rating system is in a mess and needs to be changed. Well, if we go to government to get it, we're still going to pay because it's going to be in our taxes. The other thing that concerns me deeply is the fact that we're looking at cutting our carbon. People are telling us we're going to have to stop or lower our stocking rates. But that's going to take, even if we do that, and even if we set up New Zealand the way they plan to do so, then the environmental variation is going to carry on for at least another 5 to 10 years. And we then have to support our infrastructure in a large way, and I'm probably looking more at our stop banks and where they burst, and we end up with a relocation of people. So in my summary, if you want to look at it, we need to be charging a whole lot more, or we get some other way of obtaining the money to achieve the work that we need to do, because government is throwing more at us all the time. But, you know, right from day one, I was sitting on 7.2% lift, which was inflation last year, knowing that we weren't going to meet what we needed to do, but knowing that the welfare of our constituents is important. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, look, I certainly agree with a lot of what's been said. And my position is 6.9, and I guess I do apologise if it's not quite on topic, but I'm just to Lyndall's point about fixed incomes. What information we have around building shifts on those households that are fixed incomes, and is that being communicated clearly? Because whatever number we come out with, that's what people are going to open their rates for and look at. We have communicated clearly that you'll see a property lift value that hasn't been calculated. That's been quite shocking. I guess it's just trying to steer off any misunderstanding.
We have discussed, and I think the public are aware, there's significant changes in real estate values in the last 4 years, and it varies between Invercargill and South River Street. Those variations are reflected in the samples that we have and that we look at each year. Some of the urban properties are affected more than others. And so we're looking this year at the residential property could be between $10 and $40, depending on the value of the property. I would like to point out that we're well aware of the difficulties our ratepayers have. We have 48,000 customers, and when we send out the invoices, we hear from quite a few. So our staff are on the front line. We do have to work with people. We give them the opportunities to pay their invoices as they can, quarterly, monthly if they have to, some of them weekly. I would also like to point out that there is a rates rebate scheme here that they can apply to with their main council, and they can add our rates to them. So if they qualify for rates rebate from the council, they can certainly add our rates to them.
Right, but myself, then Paul. I think it's what I read into politics, so always believe politicians should say what they mean and mean what they say. So I've been a bit conflicted. People were angry at the 50% rise. We came out with a couple of years ago. But I acknowledge that we were faced with a significant lot of it income, and we've got a statutory responsibility to actually do a whole lot of functions. And again, I would like to really thank our staff. We've got a lean meeting team who actually perform incredibly well when you look at some of the counterparts. We've got larger staffs and far more resources. I think we do well. You know, the old saying is that necessity is the mother of invention. I'm seeing our staff looking at things and saying, do we have to do this? Can we do it better? And actually, that's what the public are having to do out there at the moment. But people on fixed income, things have moved that rapidly. It's people with a mortgage or an income that's dropped. Are feeling it. There's a lot of people with deficit budgets out there at the moment. But one side of the argument is to go over higher to a degree of comfort. The fact that marine fees come back, I've always got to believe that if we do have a windfall, we should get the people today. And that's probably why I'm sitting at the 6.9. I know it's going to be very tight. I know we're going to have some really tight conversations next year about actually protecting our community and assets. But that is already Tony has pointed out. That's a difference between borrowing for groceries and doing work that has intergenerational benefit. And I think when we have those conversations, And because it's expensive, we do need to have those conversations next year. But all in all, that's where I'm sitting on it. That a big thank you to Will and the team who have actually worked tirelessly to go through their budgets. Still actually go to the land with incentives, and that's pretty impressive. I know you guys have been working the bone over the last few weeks, and I just want to give my heartfelt thanks to you, because it hasn't been easy, but I think it leaves us in a good position going forward, where we'll be able to actually evaluate the benefits against the costs of all the work we're doing. And some of the work we just have to do. Trying to work smarter is really, really good. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. During the whole process, I've not really advocated. My question has always been, reassurance on the fact that we're diversifying the water service will be environment increase for us. And the one thing I've found being a new councillor during some process, and I'd like to reassure like the huge consideration in the council. Just put into my mind and sort of for the rights that yes. I think we want the difference. Still the determination yes. It's go up high where it's still going to be. Once down there. It's where I do understand it's income. The rural inflation always goes up. Income squeeze, disposable income. There's no longer disposable. So our thoughts, my thoughts, go out to all the ratepayers and everyone. And let's hope we don't have an issue. Where are we in the next 3 years for good things with what we're asking.
Well, anybody else before we move to involving resolutions? Right, we have on pages 53 and 54, we have recommendations. First one is the note report. Second is to approve the allocation of the room fee for the 23-24 year. Confirm the average rate of rise. As I'm happy to move 6.9. Down there and have to go to 1.5. We'll do it all at the same time. All right, I think we can do that. So we have a mover, we have a second of that. Phil. But the motion is open for discussion. Any further discussion? Peter.
Yeah, I just want to items number 2, the allocation of the marine fee income. So who do we determine that ourselves, that allocation, or have we got a framework where we have to move within there within that marine fee of allocation?
Usually we have a marine fee allocation policy. And generally in long-term plans, we publish an allocation schedule that links up to the policy. For the 2021-31 long-term plan, we did not publish an allocation schedule because of the loss of cruise ship income at that time. What you see there is essentially the re-establishment of that allocation schedule, and with the exceptions of the Underia program and you could argue the coastal science program, it looks fairly similar to what you would have seen in previous long-term plans.
Thank you very much. I just want to highlight the point that if we do the next couple of years when we find these things become really difficult, that policy may have to be changed. Looking at this, I'm not saying to do it, but I'm saying that these are the really difficult discussions that we will have to do going forward.
I've got Eric, then Paul.
Thank you, Chair. think probably the point that hasn't been made in our discussion to this point is that when we started this work in our workshops, we were at a higher level, but we took cognizance of the pressures that have occurred both within our town sector and our rural sector, cost of living and on-farm inflation running somewhere between 14 and 20%, and the ability to pay and the impact that this would have. And so we have seriously considered the pressures that this increase will take and have landed on this level, which is quite a bit lower than when we started the discussion initially. And I just think that could be recorded.
Thank you. With regards to the marine fee allocation, community. Is that for community groups that are study cleanups and hearing with regards to that?
Is through each year we've had some approaches about on there on page. Down the bottom of page 56, there's a paragraph that talks about the approaches we've had to date, and so there is the allocation policy that these need to align with. But we have had an approach from the Southern Coastal Charitable Trust for the annual coastal cleanup, which we had funded previously. And so we will put an approach from the Stewart Island on helicopter field.
I do know that the cost of those section 5. Is there any movement seeing more?
So the amounts included have been what they've requested, but we believe that with the upcoming long-term plan and the review of the policies that attach, that will be a need to look at how we combine for community allocations going forward as part of the overall discussion. So it's very much a long-term plan conversation that we're getting into.
No, that's good. Only the community groups I like. Doing it for a reason.
Unfortunately, the last one was COVID actually forced the cancellation, but that group were fantastic job. And in the past, we've actually had a council go on occasionally. So we'll keep that in mind. Lyndall.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chairman, I wanted to compliment staff on the composition of this paper. It covers off a whole lot of what we talked about on the process on the way through, and raises the issues and answers the questions that we asked on the way through. So a really thorough and useful paper. Thank you.
Good comment. Well, I'm quite aware that it was dark when staff was still working on Friday night to actually present this to you within the time frames. So well done. Okay, we've had the recommendations moved and seconded. I will put the recommendations. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against?
Yes.
Alice is a no. We'll register your.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is passed. Right, we will move to item 3, which is the fees and charges schedule 2024. Quite a weighty little colourful document. You want to comment on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I've highlighted on page 16, the fees and charges schedule, it's an annual review, and it has been a very thorough annual review. We were looking for opportunities to improve the readability, the clarity, the understanding of our customers, our consent holders, and other users of our service. We also, of course, need to ensure that it is reflecting all the current and pending legislation that we need to work through. And I just draw your attention to the fact that in our policies, we have a user pays policy, which says that depending on the activity, a significant percentage needs to be paid by the user, where there is a direct and private benefit. So it's important that we continue to keep the fees and charges at a level where they are balanced as we expect between the ratepayer general and the beneficiary of the activity. So we're recommending an overall 7% increase for this fees and charges schedule.
Any questions for the team? When do businesses open for people to comment on, when does it close?
Tomorrow. Today or tomorrow, it'll be available on the website.
The website will be up to date, the consultation will be open tomorrow.
Okay. And what's the time period for public consultation? 1 month. Good night.
But, sorry, Chair, but to make it clear, the changes to the schedule are pretty yellow.
Yeah.
Councillor Rodway, any team.
Okay, I'll take you first, Morris, followed by Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I know this is not a change, but I just want to wonder on the debt collection costs, 2.7 under section 2 is 12% added interest charge on overdue invoices. Why 12%? And yeah, it just seems to be a bit high in addition to the debt collection costs.
Standard number to be fair recommended from a debt collection company. It is a penalty rate that is applied to encourage payment. To be fair, we seldom add it to your general run-of-the-mill overdue account. We're talking penalties here for significant non-compliance, long-term outstanding debt, where we have not been able to achieve recovery in any other way.
Right. Okay. So it's not added to any overdue rates that are a few days overdue, sort of thing.
Actually, a really important point for you, councillor. It's not added to rates. It's for general debt.
Oh yes. Sorry.
We should clarify that the rates regime has its own penalty clauses or penalty rates, penalty interest rates attached under the rates resolution, which is 10%, but it's twice a year, 10%. This one is for general debt, for invoices for consents, applications, annual charges. And we're not running it on a monthly basis, if that's what you're suggesting. We don't add it necessarily for you being a few days over.
All right. Thank you.
Jeremy.
Yes, just on that in regards to the Councillor Rodway said, like, the interest rates, not a farming businesses, they're probably pushing 9% now, overdrafts, getting well over 10. So it's not so seeing a high for residential, it's not from the rural perspective. I was just going to add that obviously in regards to the fees and challenges, challenges, literally, obviously. Just really want to reiterate that we do want feedback, because obviously we're getting a few phone calls, we get us some of the charges, so this is the opportunity time for the community to certainly give us feedback, and we're certainly seeing the question of your point of view, so I want to reiterate that. So it's probably publicize that quite well, get it out there, so. But otherwise, I can move this if there's no other problem.
Another problem, the movement, not that word.
Oh, okay.
Because Lyndall and Neville.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify the process for feedback. So what channels might our constituents feedback to it?
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. We'll be putting this up on our website. We have a consultation webpage, so a consultation portal, which will contain all the information, links, fees and charges schedule as proposed, with the yellow highlighting so change is easily identifiable. And there will be a feedback box that's on that form as well. So that's how we're going to be collecting feedback. There are other ways that we're going to let the community know about it through our usual channels. which are, for example, we'll put something on Facebook, there'll be a media release going out, website update.
Yes. In addition, Chair, all consent holders who are the people generally affected will be advised directly in August, September with their annual charges. So we put an explanatory note and we refer them to the policy changes.
Is that right? Email or WhatsApp?
So for this, we're going to be putting out an email at the same time to that consent statement list, because they do interact with the consent statement quite a lot, so we know there'll be an interest in it. Yeah.
I suppose where we don't have any. In advance of the
consultation.
So sorry, just to be clear, that mailing list will be contacting them once resolved to bring out the proposal. That will happen today.
Well, noting that Jeremy was going to propose the recommendation, Chairman, I was going to do that, and I'll second the recommendation. I believe that the fees and schedules coverage go out for consultation, I mean, to see what people think about what they provide. We make a final decision.
Thank you, Campbell. Move and second. Any further comments? Not, the recommendation, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, no, carried. Page 98. Okay, item 4 is the local government New Zealand annual conference, and we need to accept the conference tour. That takes place before the end of July this year, so we conference itself is the 26th to 28th. And the pre-conference starts on the 24th.
It's just a standard item, and I'll just take it as read and seek expressions of interest.
I'm probably obligated to go, so I'll put my hand up. Jeremy, you
Expressions or nominations? Expressions?
Expression interest, that is, basically.
Let's probably process we can handle that. You're not available.
No, I'm not, Susan.
That's all
Very keen.
Well, that's a free expression of interest. It's something like that.
So we move the chairman and three councillors, two councillors,
Deputy and, three councillors.
yep, be nominated to attend this conference on behalf of Climate South.
I'll sign that.
Any further discussion? We'll put the recommendation, all in favour, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's no, carry. The next item is local government New Zealand nominations for the president and vice president. I was made aware of a couple of potential candidates. Zoe meeting the other day, who indicated they would quite like to come and talk to the council of Southland. My feeling is we don't need to nominate somebody. I'll obviously have to do a nomination session with the year of the race. But before we make any decisions, it would be quite worth it to hear from candidates, so that delegates are in place. But the items open for discussion.
Very Chairman, in view of what was said, what I'm reading here is that we postponed any decision about making a nomination or review from the potential candidates.
And there may well not be a need to make a nomination unless we come down to who we vote for.
Well, I'm going to make the same point. We don't know who the field completely is. We might be backing the wrong horse too soon and want to change our mind. So I'm of the view we should just apply ho and see, who's in the field and then make our decision after we've had an informed appraisal.
From the body language, look, the little one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that, that item 2, recommendation 2 is whether we wish to exercise our ability to make a nomination. I'm assuming that we don't,
My motion was that we were making this.
but this is only for a nomination. We don't have to nominate the people who have already expressed an interest in Nickel on the quiet.
Well, the point is that nominations close on the 31st of May. This is your own council meeting at which to make that decision. So
Yeah,
if
so-
you're going to nominate, you need to decide you are. If you're not going to nominate, it's not a problem.
And when, Nicola, can I just clarify, you're not suggesting that we nominate the people who expressed an interest to you?
They've expressed an interest to come and talk to us. They didn't ask for a nomination.
Right, so we don't need-
should be back. Both parties, as I know about, must have movers and seconders, so.
Nice.
Well, on the basis of that, yeah, well, moving and seconding.
Yeah, we'll do that report. Well,
That's
but
what you're talking.
yeah,
And that we don't.
well, we eliminate 2.
Right.
So I'll move 1 and 3.
Is we clear on what we're both voting on?
If you're noting the report and deciding not to exercise your ability to
Yeah.
make nominations,
And number 3 is that we're waiting to hear from
Yeah.
what nominations are.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you.
We have a move around the second. Any further discussion? I will put the recommendation, all in favour, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let us do item 6, what is the LGZ annual meeting and agreement process.
and once again, this is a standard item that comes up every year. I'm not conscious that council has wished to make any remits, but any have come through, or any that I think you wish to have considered need to go through the formal process. This allows council an opportunity to do that.
When I read it the other night, I thought, good enough on it. Rather than going through that process, and there's something that we felt a little burden through, we would have to have background information. Later on. Forward, there's 1 or 2 local issues. The carbon farming plot, then they try to come up with a local solution. These sorts of things take some time to go through a process.
Yeah, the only thing that came to mind was the survey that we did recently regarding how many hours we were spending doing council work. And so it made me more conscious of the fact that the remuneration authority determines, our funding pool. And I was also made aware recently of huge disparities between what the different councils and regional councillors get paid. So without wanting to open that can of worms necessarily, that was I'm not sure whether a remit along these lines is where that discussion could go as far as because it speaks to the equitable nature and the diversity around the table, and people's ability to not have to have a job so that they can do their council work. So I'm seeking your advice really as to whether this is an avenue that we can promote that conversation or not.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking the college, our remuneration is infinitely set by the remuneration authority. I think they are open for submissions at the moment that may be more appropriate. The points make are quite valid. We feel like council forward rules on a population basis. They did tweak it a few years ago. We did submit at that stage that coastline may be an area that could be taken into consideration. The territorial tends to be expenditure, capital value. It is quite abundant. As I said earlier, we've got a small council, a small rating base, but we're required to do all the same functions of areas that are much larger and have larger rating bases. So, well, the direction of the room, that you could go down that track, but it may well be better to, and be interested in what Will is spending, what would be the most effective raising.
Well, I think the issue, before us is the time for us to actually form something that might actually make a remit. I mean, we do have the opportunity that the strategy and policy history of the public work. But the capacity of the director to come up with, enough information for you at that meeting to be able to, you know, that committee have a remit go forward. I would say that's pretty.
Yes, I'm just right. Yeah.
So, the question if there is if there are burning matters that are beyond those that we will be taking, that the LGNZ has already taken on part sectors, that particularly that came out of the meeting at some point. We can certainly start take those forward for you and put various strategy policies to do that, but it would be a very quick outline.
No, it's fine. I just, came to mind. What are your pathways?
Okay, any further comments? So I think we are looking at just noting the report. Would you like to move? Direct certain by the level that we make. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right, item 7 is the councillors' meeting schedule.
In addition to what's included in the meeting sheet, there is request for leave of absence from Councillor Pemberton for the 8th to the 10th of May, 26th and the 29th of May, and the 3rd to the 7th of July. Plus, there's also been changes to meetings. On Thursday, the 4th of May, there's a project 1225 Museum presentation of ICC, which Councillor Lovelace. On the 6th of May, there's the King's Coronation tree planting at Queen's Park at 11 o'clock, and the official opening of the Power exhibition at 6 o'clock. Councillor Lovelace attending. And there's an NTJ meeting of councils in Runaka in Dunedin on the 17th of May at 2 o'clock, that the chairman will be attending. As a result of that, today I brought forward the council workshop scheduled for that day to 9 o'clock in the morning to allow attendance.
Here, I need leave of absence for the 17th of May. If that's, well, thank you.
Paul? Any further alterations to the schedule? The main items included in one that pass or coming up or any other leave to that.
The other thing that will be added into the meeting schedule is Councillor Evans' site visit tomorrow yesterday.
So no further additions. Would somebody like to move Brian Jeremy, Brian Neville, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Eric? You say no? No. Right, move to item 8, which is not part via the submission.
Thank you, Chair. Just to introduce Jolie Hazley, who's our team leader for fire security. Maybe met Jolie before, but nice opportunity that if you've got any technical questions, Jolie's the best place to answer them. This is a retrospective notification of submission that we provided on the 25th of April around the moth plant and an application to the Environment Protection Agency through Waikato Regional Council for control of that. So that has been issued. So I'll take the reports as read.
No.
Just wondering what we flies from the river and no what. In the meantime,
They will literally just die out because they're only feed the mock plant, so. So this, that one, mock plant.
they won't be released in South.
No, we don't have any mock plants down here in Southland, they will be released in the Waikato region, and we'll be worked up here vertically, so it becomes.
So a biosecurity issue, is there anything in place to try and stop it spreading to the south?
The mock plant itself, currently it's kind of down in the Marlborough North kind of area. Climate wise, with climate change, it could possibly come south. But it would be good here. Evidently, you can't find it, put it in your garden or anything like that. Come down, it's like any other part. Down to the North Island, so that focus is kind of excluding it from getting to Southland, they've really been able to control it.
In mind of a few years ago, of the incursion that we've so far have managed to eradicate in Southland, so I guess it's, is it quite an invasive plant?
Yes, very, very invasive. And ecological threats are kind of again bush blocks, but it also has a huge effect in urban gardens. And also the kiwi fruit industry, it's struggling with it, getting into the kiwi fruit. Supplies.
Does the Southern Climate? I don't really know.
At the moment, the southern climate is not going to be ideal for it, but with climate change, we know what's happening, and so plants can sometimes over time get used to environments. So we've got plants down here that can live in bluff, climate and times that should really be living down here, but they can acclimatise in some places. So there is possibility that mock plant, if it was anything down here, would establish, but at the same time wouldn't go after it.
So, watching gardens, it's a piece that rather than pasture, for the full ship.
Yeah, it's more of a vine, so it's maybe more in the hedges and the kind of industry would be the other thing is it does have health effects. It's got a milky sap in it that can actually go age and things like humans. So that's the whole thing about the plant, which is
But Eric, in Neville, Eric.
My question would be about the efficacy of the fly. If something that just targets the seeds, it's not going to get rid of the bug. And is there a backup plan for that? And what can you tell us about that? It is at this stage very much a localised issue for the North Island, noting that with climate change it could become an issue here, but was efficacy.
So I guess biocontrol wise, they've actually got permission, and I think they've introduced one and the other one still we can't get into the political issues, I think, with Argentina. But there's two other biocontrol agents. One is rust that actually targets the leaves, and another one is targeting the roots of the plant. So this one that they're introducing is targeting the seeds. So put them all together and you're kind of targeting the whole plant.
Neville.
Recommendation, Kevin, was for what head of the council's application to import them.
Moved, seconded by Paul. Any further discussion? Recommendation will. All those in favour will say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All good. Right, one more. Item 9. Here is a brief, quickly move.
Too late. I'll take a shot tonight. No, too late.
You're moving it.
I'm losing it.
Who said seals weren't common? All in favour, say aye. Right, that will conclude our public session. Yes, last to give us reasons to go into public. Our last couple of items.
Going into